Hello and welcome to An Old Man Watches. And today I'm going to be talking about the 1975 post-apocalyptic adventure movie, The Ultimate Warrior. Nothing to do with the WWE 1980s professional wrestler. And this film is set in the far future of 2012, so 10 years in the past. An economic disaster and a succession of crop-destroying plagues have led to complete social collapse. New York lies in ruins, although the Twin Towers are conspicuously still standing. And the city is populated mostly by scavengers and gangs. And chief amongst the latter is a crew led by Carrot, which is, as a name for a villain, is one. Fortunately, there are a few enclaves of civilization left, one of which is run by a man known as the Baron. The Baron is played by Max von Sydow, which is casting against type. He's much better known as playing villains, but he is a good guy here. And his son-in-law is a botanical genius who has developed plague-resistant seeds. This is an opportunity to rebuild society because you'll have a stable food source for the first time in a long time. However, their community is slowly dwindling due to pressure from the gangs, and it cannot survive in New York City. So the Baron hires an outsider named Carson, played by Yul Brynner, to lead his people out of the city and to a place of safety. Alas, not everybody in the community has the Baron's calm rationality, and the ever-present menace of Carrot, a sentence I find hard to say with a straight face, is wearing heavily on the group. Will anyone crack under the pressure? Will hope for the human race survive? Well, you probably know the answer to both of those movies unless you've never seen a movie before. Both those questions, unless you've never seen a movie before. But, that's not necessarily the point, is it? The point is the journey to those relatively inevitable answers an enjoyable one? Well, the movie has its pluses and minuses. Let's talk a bit about those. So I've already made a couple of digs at the main villain's name, but I think this needs exploring just a little bit more. A whimsical or unassuming name can work for a malevolent villain in a work of fiction. There's a disconnect or a contrast there that is potentially interesting if you do something with it. But I feel like you do need to do something with it, even if it is just acknowledge that disconnect of, here is this, evil man, and his name is Carrot. Now, that doesn't have to be a word as somebody saying, don't let the name fool you, he's an evil cuss. But, when you have a culture in your film where the people clearly still understand what a carrot is, you probably need to have some kind of acknowledgement that it's an odd name for a warlord. Perhaps early drafts of the script did have an acknowledgement or some kind of backstory as to the reason for Carrot's name, but there's not really anything in the film in its final form. And without that context, it's really hard to take the name seriously. I'm going to say, William Smith has great physical presence on screen. He does make Carrot a solid antagonist in every other respect, but it's hard to take him seriously every time somebody mentions his name. Basically, it's just an odd choice. I'm not sure. There must have been some kind of story to it. Who knows? Next, let's talk about two of the key members of this production. So The Ultimate Warrior is directed by Robert Klaus, who had helmed the seminal martial arts film Enter the Dragon 2 years earlier, which was sort of Bruce Lee's breakthrough English language role, and would also be picked to take the reins on Jackie Chan's first attempt to break into the US film market with 1980's The Big Brawl. Now, something seems to have gone a bit awry with Klaus's career in later years, it has to be said. He made the really dull martial arts gymnastics mashup Jim Carter in 1985, and thereafter was mostly active in the direct-to-video kung fu film market. But this is a man who knew his way around a punchy-kicky movie. Yul Brynner, meanwhile, was still a bankable star, though heading towards the end of his 20-year career. He had reignited some attention from audiences with his sinister gunslinger character in 1973's Westworld. And he probably looked like it's a name, it's not a particularly expensive name, and he's got some recent cachet. Probably looked like a good piece of casting. The thing is, his role in the gunslinger required him to look imposing, which he does, and to, sort of stalk after the good guys. It wasn't an action role. This is an action role, and it requires a physicality that Brenner does not always convincingly deliver. That's perhaps not surprising. He was in his mid-50s by this time, and he may already have been suffering from effects of the as yet undiagnosed lung cancer that did eventually kill him. But it does definitely undermine the film somewhat that he's not entirely convincing in this action hero role, because, you know, he's supposed to be the action hero. Lastly, if you've ever seen The Road Warrior, or Mad Max 2, as it's known in other parts of the world, you may have noticed from my description of this film that they have a very similar premise. Decent but beleaguered community with important resource seeks aid from wandering badass. I do have to wonder if this film was in any way a kernel of inspiration for George Miller's 1981 apocalyptic icon. That said, even if there is some inspiration from this film for Mad Max 2, I don't think it's anything more than a kernel of inspiration. While the two films share a similar starting point, they're certainly very different in terms of the cast of characters they present, the evolution of those characters' personal stories, and the film's overall plot and outcomes. You certainly won't think, I've seen all this before, if you watch the two back-to-back. In fact, it might be interesting to watch the two back-to-back to compare how they extrapolate similar kind of basic premises in different ways. So this is nothing like the case of Bruno Mattei's 2007 film Zombies the Beginning, for instance, which is literally just the script of aliens with the xenomorphs replaced by the living dead. These two films, The Ultimate Warrior and Mad Max 2, do deliver different experiences. In my opinion, Mad Max 2 is clearly the better of the two movies, but you're not going to watch this movie and think, oh, yeah, okay, but Mad Max just does this better. They are different experiences. So that's 1975's The Ultimate Warrior. Check it out if you really have a jonesing for a post-apocalyptic adventure story, I guess, and you've watched Fury Road too many times. Next time, 2010 Japanese fantasy horror film Kyonyo Dragon, or as it is rather more prosaically known in English-speaking markets, well, I mean, you can see the title for yourself. Is it as attacky as it sounds? Find out in the next video. In the meantime, thanks for watching this one. Hope you enjoyed it, and catch you next time.